welcome back to the GYST. It's been a minute since we have been together, and we got so much to catch up on, but it's been a minute. Welcome you all back to another episode of the GYST, because when it comes to life, love, and the pursuit of happiness, sometimes you just need a moment to get your shit together. I'm gonna go ahead and raise my hand. I'm not even lying to you. I'm gonna go ahead and raise my hand, because when I tell you I need a moment to get my shit together, I need a minute to get my shit together. I need like 4 days, 4 or 5 days. Okay?
It's not a plug for you going somewhere.
Maybe we should go somewhere. We've done it before. Maybe we need to go somewhere.
Honest to God. I'm your host, Kate Bellamy, my co-host, Valerie Cannon and Stephanie Hamilton. Listen, we are here, and we're just going to, before we dig into the topic, just a moment of talking about self-care, how important that is. Self-care. Yeah. Like I feel right now. So I had shot a wedding about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And listen to me, and I shoot the video, and then the photographer is there. So I just shoot video. And when I tell you to take 8 hours of video and break that down to 45 minutes or an hour, listen to me. Yeah. And I was up against my deadline. And I got stuff going on in my life. I was up against my deadline. And when I say last night, I had to really crunch. I was up till 5 a.m. I got about 2 hours of sleep. I'm working on 2 hours because I had to get it done and get it finished. It's beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful weddings I've ever attended. I mean, just beautiful.
Right.
However, I am working on and functioning on about 2 hours of sleep. So I really need to get my shit together. But I'm on a plane tomorrow, and I'm going to go get my shit together for about 4 days.
Yeah.
I'm going to go do that. So I'm just going to do a little self-care, a little relaxation, but translated, that means sleep.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Self-care, incredibly important, hard to get.
Absolutely.
It's hard. It's hard to get when you figure out what's going on in your life. It's just hard to find that kind of time.
It is the truth.
And so I think we have to get better though at carving out that time that we need. You're talking about jumping on a plane, and we've all sat there through the plane instructions where the flight attendant will say, in case of emergency, you put your mask on first.
Absolutely. And I reference that all the time. Yeah. I say it. I'm like, listen, you got to put your mask on first before you can help anybody else get theirs on.
Because we think we're doing something and we're not. We're not. Optimized.
And the truth is, you're not going to be relaxed until after the flight. It's not even on the flight. You're not relaxed until after the flight. The flight's over. You get wherever you're going, and whether that's unpacking or whatever it is you do, that's when you're actually starting your relaxation and self-care, because the flight won't do it. Because in fact, the flight itself can have some anxiety to it. So
absolutely. But I'm going to tell you something. If there is some anxiety to be had on this flight, I won't know about it. Because when I say, as soon as I get in the seat,
Jesus, take the wheel.
Boy, you better preach, because we're gonna have to, because I ain't gonna have no choice.
Wait a minute, and I always say, Jesus, take the wheel and drive fast.
And drive fast. Get me there. So I'm totally, self-care, mentally, physically, emotionally is just so important. It really is important. I literally had to come to the show tonight equipped. You understand? I had no choice. I was just like, I need something. So if at any point you see this,
no worries, we got you.
Steph and I will just keep talking. We'll just keep talking.
A little mini power nap.
Don't even worry about me. Just go on with the conversation, because I'm running on his last leg, but I'm so excited because we have missed a couple of episodes, and I'm so excited that we are back together tonight to really talk about an important topic that's really hot right now, believe it or not, and that is sex education is coming to our babies' curriculum. Like that is coming down the pipe. So let me ask you, as parents, what is too soon to have that conversation about sex? And what does that conversation look like to a first grader, second grader, third grader?
I don't think it's ever too soon. I really don't. And you're not going to be having the same conversation with your 2-year-old that you're having with your, let's say, your 22-year-old or your 18-year-old as he or she is going off to college, But you begin having conversations and get comfortable with talking with your child about their body parts.
But what does that
Use the
conversation
real
look
names.
like? You say, okay, you say, you do the anatomy thing. You kind of talk about the different body parts. And even then we start to give it nicknames. We're not calling
I did not. I did not.
You start to give it nicknames because you're talking to a kid and
No, I did not.
How much detail?
This is what I did because my husband wanted no part of that. So I was the one doing all the it wasn't like we sat down, opened the book. We would just talk. Like, hey, just take advantage of the opportunity when it presented itself. So my daughter, she was an early talker. She talked before she was 2. She's having full conversations. But of course, all the words aren't coming out right? So one day she says to me, Mommy, I remember what you said to do. Nobody can touch my pajamas or my brother's my
pajamas. Okay, cool.
I know exactly what she's talking about. Right. She said,
my pajamas or my brother's peanuts. You're absolutely, and I said, you're absolutely right. Nobody can touch your pajamas or his peanuts. You're absolutely right. So
let me ask you this. So does it stop there? Because again, so we talk about those basic things. Nobody can touch my vagina. I'm saying not
pajamas.
My pajamas. Okay, right. That just came out wrong. Nobody can touch my pajamas, or nobody can touch my brother's peanuts. Got it. But now, does that constitute the conversation of sex?
No, because I think what it does is it makes it easier later on because it's a continuing conversation. And I'll say, as someone who has a 4-year-old right now, and this is crazy because probably about a year or so ago, she watches YouTube Kids. So there was this video she started watching by Baby Bus, and it talks about educational content for kids 10 months to 7 years. And one of them talks about my private parts. Nobody touches my private parts. And I try to make sure I listen to everything she's watching. So I listened to it. And my first thought was, oh my God, really? And I thought, well, you know what? The world we live in, they've got to know that. So I've let her watch it. And the interesting thing is, fast forward a year later, Casey's always had eczema. So we're going to the dermatologist, and she's gone to the dermatologist many times. This last time we went to the dermatologist, she says to me before he comes in the room, I said, you're going to let the doctor look at your skin? She said, yeah, but he can't look at my butt. And I said, okay. I said, well, when he comes in, you tell him that. So, and I thought it important that she could actually tell him that. So he came in the room. And he's like, hi, Casey, good to see you again. Let me take a look at your skin. She said, okay, you can't look at my butt. And so they do, because this world we live in, I mean, unless you're sitting at the daycare or at school with your kids, you at least want them to understand what it is and what they're saying no to. Because when we look at, kids back in the day being abused, a lot of it, they just didn't even understand what that was.
But that's why I'm asking the question about, is it just the basic stuff that we talk about? We talk about the, the wee and the GG, and, that's where it is. But we're also living in a world of Me Too, which doesn't necessarily constitute the physical act per se,
Right.
but are they able to identify just sexual harassment or sexual abuse or just are they able to identify when they hear it and the terms of when people want power and control, because sexual abuse is about power and control.
Right.
It's not even about the act. And
Right.
so how much and how far do we go with our children? You know, I have to say, I remember when you know, my daughter was I don't have to worry about having this conversation because she done had kids, so she clearly knows about sex.
Right. She got 3.
So
Yeah,
we're good there. We're good there. But I remember being in the pediatrician, and she was like 17, maybe. And so periodically I would just ask her, I was like, you know, have you had sex? And she would say no. And then this particular time we're sitting in the pediatrician, and she's like, hey, I say to her, you know, we're just sitting there and there's kids playing around on the floor and we just kind of sitting there casually. And I say to her, hey, have you had sex? And she says, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm like,
so maybe you shouldn't be a pediatrician.
So I'm stunned by the whole thing. And I'm like, well, did you use protection? She's like, yes. And then my next question is, why in the hell are we sitting in the pediatrician?
I was going to say, we're in the wrong office.
Another kind of doctor.
Well, you should have asked her that question before you went to the pediatrician.
That's what I'm saying, but you don't know. You sitting here, all these babies, these kids
they're playing with Legos.
They're playing with Legos and Barbies, and you doing the do. Like, really?
Well, but that's because you see a pediatrician until you're 18 years old. So that's absolutely right. But you've got kids having sex at 12, 13, and 14.
You should see a pediatrician right up to the point where you having sex. Now, the moment you having sex, you need to switch that one out for the GYN. Okay.
But you know what?
What's going on for you?
I feel like the key takeaway in that scenario, and each of the scenarios that we've outlined, different phases of our kids' lives, right? Because, you know, I'm dealing with 20 somethings now, and Val, you have, you know, older children too, right? You're facing the older ones. And it's about what, for me, it was the openness, right? So we can talk about anything, no matter how uncomfortable it makes me, we'll worry about that later. Right? You tell me anything. So yeah, now I'm sitting here in this little playroom looking at you like, well, we could have had this in a conversation in the car or sometime before, but at least she had it with you.
Right.
And she felt that she could tell you that and you weren't going to explode, you know, in that moment. So now so you're having conversations and they're becoming more age appropriate, you know, as the kid gets older.
Exactly. And that's what makes it easier. I think when you start those conversations early, because we live in a world where you've got to start those conversations earlier, and it's more about identifying your body parts and what's considered private. And so other people aren't allowed to look at that other than, you know, mommy or daddy when they're giving you a bath or whoever you've designated. But again, you know, that's kind of where it starts. And then you get, like you said, more age appropriate. And I think it makes it a little easier as the kids get older, because then they feel more comfortable talking to you about it because you've already established that open dialogue about it. So they're going to ask you questions. You're going to provide information, no matter how much in your head you're freaking out about it. Like, I don't really want to talk about sex with my 10-year-old. But if the thing is, you want your 10-year-old to feel comfortable coming and talking to you about it. And so I think it just makes those conversations easier.
So here's the other thing. All right, let's play this out. There's a different conversation. So now you're talking to your elementary school child and you're talking about sex and you're saying, hey, here's your body parts. You know, these are your private parts. You don't let anybody touch your pajamas, or you don't let anybody touch your peanuts, you know, all of it. So now where does the conversation go? You're in middle school now. Yeah. Where does the conversation go then?
It's a continuation.
Change?
Oh yeah, because you're going to have children who are, so it almost.
So now what are we talking about at that point?
Yeah. So for me, you know, again, take advantage of opportunities. You see a young lady dressed a certain way, or a young man dressed a certain way, or you see kids out in public doing something, or you hear about, you know, I'm going to make up something. Keisha has a boyfriend and they're in the 3rd grade. Really? So what does that mean? Like, what do they do? Like, what's a boyfriend do with what do you guys do in 3rd grade? And you talk about what makes you comfortable or uncomfortable. Right. Don't let anybody touch you in a way that makes you uncomfortable. And I was very specific. I didn't name names like, Joe or John, but, I don't care who it is, whether it's a teacher, whether it's someone in our community, a family member, a church member, something makes you uncomfortable, you say something to me, right? And I'll deal with that. You don't have to deal with that. Your mother will take care of that, or your father take care of it,
But you remember when I told you, my granddaughter asked the question, when you kiss a boy, like, you all remember that conversation.
That was my favorite.
And I think someone gave a very inappropriate answer.
She was like, when you kiss a boy,
then what?
What do you say after that? Do you say good job? Do you say, that was great? Do you say? And all of us unanimously were like, yeah, I think I took my shirt off.
But the good thing is, because that was your granddaughter, she knew to take our advice with a grain of salt.
Yes.
We were all sitting around having drinks and she was probably like, well, she probably wasn't even shocked. Right. She probably wasn't even shocked that you brought it up to us. But yes, when she was like, yeah, she asked me, what do you do after you kiss a boy? I was like, take your shirt off.
Which is like, take your shirt off. That's what I did. Like, hey.
I turned out okay.
What you say? I turned out okay. I went to college.
Now, wait a minute. But let me just say that I graduated.
I graduated from college.
Times.
I got 7 degrees.
I think part of it is, you talk about it. You laugh about it. That takes the edge off. You say something ridiculous. She knew that was not.
Yes.
You say something, you take the edge off. Now it's not that creepy thing that your grandmom and her girlfriends are talking about, And now it becomes relatable, approachable. Okay, now really, here's what you do.
Here's what you do. Exactly. And that's exactly right, because she pretty much rolled her eyes and walked out the room and left us. So we know.
So I just want to.
We found it way more amusing than she did.
So just openly talk about the transition of the conversation. So now you're in middle school. What are you adding on to that conversation? You talked about the private parts. You talked about don't let nobody touch this. So now they're in middle school. What are you talking about now? Are you talking about the real deal of how the act actually happens?
I think it ends up being like Stephanie talked about, it's a very organic conversation, because if you've established a relationship with your child where they're coming in talking to you on a regular basis, and just, let's say haphazardly, they're like, oh, so like you said, Keisha got a boyfriend. And, when you kind of open the dialogue there and you take advantage of that opportunity to say, Keisha got a boyfriend. Well, what did her and her boyfriend do? And then at that point, they're going to share with you maybe some of the things that Keisha and her boyfriend does. And then you can talk about those things. But then that also lets you lead into, because listen, we know kids, even in middle school, are having sex. So yeah, I think the conversation can absolutely go there, because kids in middle school are having sex.
But that's what I'm talking about. So we really have to open that conversation up. Yeah. Because even if a grade school child is in a situation, unfortunately, molestation plays a huge role in a lot of children's lives. And so even if they understanding what is happening to them in the moment is important.
Yes.
Do you understand? Yeah. Because understanding what is happening to them in the moment, I think it doesn't minimize it, but it helps with the trauma.
Yes.
As a result of it.
It does.
And so I think learning early, like the real deal.
Right.
Because kids get molested all the time, and they need to understand and have a better understanding of what is happening to them when it's happening to them.
Right. And that it's wrong, and that they can tell somebody about it.
And it's not their fault.
And it's not their fault.
It,
Yep.
And I'm talking in terms of terminology, because
Yeah.
if an adult is molesting you, they're using adult terminology with you.
Oh,
If
so
you
the other
don't
thing is,
know what that is, you understand what I'm saying? If you
the
don't
other
know,
thing
like,
we talked about a lot was secrets. We
Yeah.
don't keep secrets.
absolutely.
We don't
Or
keep
when you're
secrets from each
talking
other.
about,
You know,
or
someone
when you're
tells you
talking,
don't tell anything, you run right over and tell me.
right.
That's the key
Yeah.
phrase.
Or
You know.
when you're
Right.
talking about things like, don't touch my pajamas. That's cute and that's wonderful. That person that may touch you or something is not going to use that.
Correct.
They're not going to
Well,
use
we weren't
that.
saying pajamas. You know,
No,
we
no,
weren't
no,
saying
no, no. I
pajamas.
get
But
what you're saying,
Right.
but
And
I'm
that's
just saying
just
we
how it
have
came
to
out
be
for her.
yeah.
right. We have to be more, I think, more honest in understanding the real deal, because if our child is ever in a situation and they don't know what that terminology is, they don't know what those words mean, they don't know, when an adult says those words, they're like, I don't know what that is. I never heard that.
So here's the other thing we did. We were very clear about the bodies, also what our expectations were of them as they were becoming older. And we also were telling them, that body you have is a God-created body. It's a beautiful body.
Yes.
It is yours. There should be nothing that goes on. So like putting
You
these
should protect it at all costs.
on your body, like that body is for you and the Lord. Like there are things and people come in and do things that is not godly. That's not acceptable. It's not acceptable to your parents. So you really build a framework around, I'm comfortable with my body, and people can't do certain things. I'm sorry. Go ahead, because you were saying.
And no, and when you were talking about how, you need to use that real terminology, that's interesting, because I remember one of Casey's teachers at daycare mentioned something about said something, and she used the correct term for her private area. And she said, the teacher said, wow, I was really impressed. She said, because most parents won't tell their kids what it's really called. So she said, I was like really amazed, like, oh my God, she used like she knew the actual word.
Absolutely.
And I said, yeah, she needs to know what it is. Like, I'm not hiding what it is. Like, I mean, those are what your parts are. So we're going to call it what it is. Now, what it ends up coming out later, pajamas and peanuts, that's fine. But
she said pajamas and peanuts.
Right. But she's going to know what it is. And so I remember one of her teachers saying that. Yeah.
But children don't know the word is dirty. Well, it's not a dirty word.
And it's not a dirty word.
It's like saying, apple or chair or something.
Right.
It's
adults who put that stuff on kids.
Right. Like if you have an arm, you have a vagina. It's not a dirty word.
But not only
there's nothing dirty about it.
But not only that, the thing is that, and when I say go deep, because in the street, they're not saying vagina. They're not saying that. I need you to know when you hear that word, you know what that is. It's the same thing. And I know as parents, we don't want to put that out there in the atmosphere and in the world, but the world will give it to them raw.
Yeah, I'll give her the word. I don't like it, but I'll give her the word.
No, right. And it's true. None of us like it, but I want my child to be able to identify it when they hear it.
Yep.
And they're not confused, and they're able to say, I know exactly what you're talking about, and it doesn't work for me. You understand what I'm saying? Because if you don't, they hear that word and they don't know what to do with that. They may think it's something else.
Right. And because, there are times you're hearing that word and it's being used derogatory. So
Absolutely.
You're right. So they do need to understand that there's some other things they call it. Here's what else they call it.
That is my point.
And you need to make sure whether like that's not okay.
Right.
And
that when you hear any of these words, when you hear this word, when you hear this word, when you hear this word, all of it means no.
Right.
All of it means no. Because we don't know how the world will give it to them. We don't know what they're here. Because let me tell you something. You go into those elementary schools, you go into those middle schools, you will hear some shit that you haven't heard even as an adult.
Oh, girl.
You like, what they call it now? Because, and you have to stay abreast of that kind of stuff because of that reason. Now, I don't, I don't worry because again, my daughter's so old, who actually has a birthday coming up on Friday. And so I don't have to worry about that, but she has children and her children are adults pretty much. So you have to, but sex education is coming to the curriculum. And I have to say, I totally agree with it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, some parents are not doing what we're talking about.
No,
I mean, in my mind, I want to be giving them information, and the school is just backing up what I'm saying. And if there's a question, you can come ask me. I mean, as comfortable as I may be, we'll talk about it.
Right.
And I always say, if you want to talk to me, you can talk to your doctor. Like if you don't want to talk to me, you have an auntie you can talk to. You have you have resources you can go to.
Right. You want to establish who they can talk to. So they need to have somebody to talk to. And I don't want you to hear anything out in the world that you're not hearing from me.
Right. And that is the part where we have to get honest with our children and basically, and the real deal. And for me, my youngest is she'll be 13. All I got is the real deal. If you hear any of these words, because that thing, pajamas, represents a whole lot of different words. And I need you to understand that when you hear them, that you know exactly what somebody is talking about. And you're not fooled or you're not hoodwinked or you're not confused about what they're talking about. And so it's the hard conversation, but I believe that, the world in which we live in now, we have to start them younger and younger and younger and younger so that they understand what is happening in this world. They understand that if an adult comes and touch them and they call it something different, they're like, oh, I ain't never heard of that. And they,
right.
Okay, that's good because I never heard of that. Nobody ever said that was anything bad. You have to give it to them from a real perspective.
Yeah.
I just think that you do. So now we move from grade school, elementary school, and we move to middle school. And then the conversation changes again when you get to high school, because now you're talking birth control. Now you're talking a completely different conversation.
Listen, in high school, they might be talking to you.
They might be helping you out with your love life. Okay.
Right. Like, listen, grandma, here's what they call it now. Right. So they might be telling you some things you don't know. But yeah, the conversation, it's different at every age. And again, I think the earlier you started, the more comfortable you are as a parent having those conversations.
And I'll add this. We have to be teaching our children not only what is expected for other people to do or not do to them, but what they can do or not do to other people.
Girl, listen to me. I was getting there. I was about to get there because guess what? We often only teach what people can't do to you, but we don't teach what you can't do to other people. And I just want to share, Lisa was like, my family, we teach vagina and we teach penis. Kids need to understand anatomy as well as their bodies change, and they need to understand on the flip side, they need to know the slang terms as well. And that's what I'm talking about. They need to know that also. She also called me old. And Lisa, listen, I love you for real. I do. And you're right. I am. And so I'm so thankful that I'm really past the stage of having that conversation with not just my child, but my grandkids too.
Right.
And so I'm looking for the great grands to have that conversation with too.
Right.
I'll be so old. They will listen, they'll look at me like, what in the world is she talking about?
Right. Like,
but we do, especially today, and for protection, but even, our kids, even when they're graduating from college and going into the work world, we have to get them to understand when your boss approaches you or some of your coworker approaches you, like we got to have that conversation with them that says, hell no, because they will make you feel like your life is on the line. They'll make you feel like your life is on the line in exchange for something sexual.
Yep.
And so this sex conversation really does need to start early.
Yep.
Like early.
Yeah.
And then carry all the way.
And needs to be continuous. Start early and be continuous.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That college thing though is real. When they go away to college and they're on campus and you're talking to them about the parties that you're going to, and if there's going to be underage drinking there, and what happens if you're in a room with a couple boys or a couple girls, or and things that didn't necessarily. It's different now, and you gotta let them know this stuff is real.
Yes.
Do not get caught up in a situation where you're in a room and this girl now says she was assaulted and you were one of the boys in the room.
Okay.
Don't be around when some kid drinks so much that she falls down the steps and now she's in some kind of an alcoholic, coma or something. Like you have to be aware of these things.
Yep.
You gotta be honest with your kids.
That's why you cannot pull any punches today. Listen,
Nope.
when we were growing up, you could call it peanuts and you could call it all of that cute little stuff. Today, you got to keep that thing real.
Yep.
You got to get them to understand the seriousness of it and all the terminology that's used for it and all the acts and all the actions and all the game that comes with it, all of that stuff. You got to put that on the line for your kids. And I'm saying even at younger ones, because adults prey on children because they don't know. But you get a 5-year-old that will look at an adult saying, yeah, that term you saying right there, yeah, my mama told me what that is.
Right.
She told me what that is.
Exactly.
So you can run anything by me, even at 5, even at 6, at 7 or 8. I heard that. My mom told me what that is.
Yeah.
We have to educate our kids. We really do. And I'm glad that, schools are deciding to bring that as a curriculum and really have that sex talk with children.
But there are going to be parents who are going to oppose it. There are going to be parents who say, pull my kid out during that time.
Of course.
We handle that at home, which is code word for we don't talk about that.
Right. You're not talking about it, because the truth is, if you're okay with talking about it at home, you don't have a problem with the education in school. Listen, even back when I was in school, I remember being in 7th grade and one of my schoolmates at 12 got pregnant. So it's not a new conversation. It's not a new conversation.
The minute you have a period, the minute you can get pregnant.
Right. And she was clearly sexually active and at 12 years old was pregnant and had a baby.
Yeah. So we have to use, because again, as we go from generation to generation to generation, there's code words that people use. It's code words. And we have to stay abreast. And that is why when people say, I don't get on social media, you don't have to get on it for you, but get on it for your kids.
Mm-hmm.
Get on it for your kids, because that's where you find out what the next term they calling it.
And you know what else?
What do they call it? When they started doing different kind of sex acts and calling it birth control and doing things like anal sex and saying we ain't really having sex, or doing things like child, listen, people don't know. And when we think that our kids are smart, they are smart in certain areas, but there are areas where they are very naive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's our responsibility to keep them abreast. And that's why I stay on top of and I'm a grandmother. My child is an adult, way into an adult. But I stay abreast of it as well, because I want to know. And when I talk to my grandkids, no holds barred. No holds barred. You need to know what they're saying out on the streets, because one of the things that we struggle with is our children today are sheltered. They're sheltered. You know what I mean? They now grow up in suburbs and they aren't exposed to a lot of stuff that's happening. And then they get out there in the real world and people are saying stuff and they're like, well, what's that? What is that?
Right.
It's our job to make sure that they know what they need to know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I'm all for the sex education piece in the elementary schools. Tell them the real deal. Tell them what's up. Tell them what to do, what not to do, what to look for, what to listen for, what to watch for. All of those things need to be taught, not just at home, but it needs to be a part of their curriculum as well. I agree. Yes. Thank you guys so much. Those who have tuned into the GYST. Lisa, I love you. You and I are going to have some words, because, you said I'm old, but I'm going to take it. I love you because, I get it. I am old. I'm not even going to lie. I got a daughter that's, will be 42.
Oh my God. Really?
42 on Friday.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and take that. Because if you got a child that's 42, your ass is old.
Look, it's a badge of honor.
That's all I'm saying.
Right?
I'm not mad at it. I ain't mad at it at all. But your ass is old. Okay. But I'm gonna go ahead and take that because I love the age I am in the life. And I just thank God that I'm here to see it. That's all. I thank God I'm here to see it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So all of you who have been watching the Gist tonight, thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. We are here every Monday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. And I know we've missed a few, but we are back. So make sure you tune in every Monday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. Because when it comes to life, love, and the pursuit of happiness, sometimes you just need a moment to get your shit together. And so do we. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.